Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is on The Cremator from 1968, directed by Juraj Hers from Czechoslovakia. This is another second run release, so pretty much if you want strange European films from the 50s, 60s and 70s, second run is your go-to. This is a tale about power and corruption and the lure of fascism and salvation and fantasy, all set on the kind of backdrop of Germany occupying Czechoslovakia during World War II. It focuses on the Cremator character, played by Rudolf Herzinski. I'm not going to pronounce the character name, I'm just going to refer to him as the Cremator. As his kind of fantasy world just gets stranger and stranger as he becomes embroiled in fascism, until he comes up with his own ideas for a final solution for these poor souls trapped on Earth. The release is multi-region. Again, you get a booklet with the second run. It's got really good extras. It's got a filmed introduction by the Key brothers, who are famous for their animation with puppets. Juraj Hers, Hers wanted to become an actor, but he didn't make it, so he got into puppetry pretty much around the same era as Jan Swijrmaker, but he then started directing live action films. So the Key brothers talk about that. It has Her's debut short film The Junk Shop from 1965. There's a new and exclusive commentary by Kat Ellinger, who's always very good. And there's a 2017 projection booth podcast on the film, co-hosted by Mike White and Sam Dagan. So again, with second run, it's an excellent release, an excellent print, and really good extras. Just a small gripe with second run: depending on what colour they choose to use the spine, it's very difficult to read the details. But again, that's first world problems. That's just my eyesight. It's another wonderful release from second run that I would highly recommend. The film itself is quite wonderful. It's not perfect. It's one of those films, it reminds me a lot of Elio Petri's Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion, which I recently did a random review on as well, and the fact that it's almost a 5-star film, but it's not quite. As you may know, I don't rate films out of, or rate films out of 5, but I don't do halves. So it's a 4-star film for me. It's just a bit unfocused in the middle. If it was a bit tighter and kind of trimmed a little bit in the middle part of the film, it would probably be a 5, but it's very close. The last 15-20 minutes of the film are absolutely wonderful. The beginning of the film is amazing. Hertz uses fisheye lenses and close-ups and wide-angle lenses to disorientate the audience There's a kind of subjective voiceover from the Cremator. He sees things that other characters don't see. There's a dark-haired woman with flowers who wanders in and out of scenes, appears in different places that he can only see, and you can read her as death or salvation or his ideal or whatever. He carries, or he reads from this book about Tibet and the Dalai Lama, and he has these visions of himself as a Tibetan monk coming to him and saying that he is the next Buddha, he is the next Dalai Lama, he is the saviour to all the people. So he's a little unhinged. So the film kind of starts, introduces his family, a son, daughter, and his wife. Are in the zoo, and he's talking about animals, and then the shots of his children in cages. It's all very expressionistic. There's amazing imagery in the film. Again, I'm not going to go into spoilers that much, even though you can probably figure out what's going to happen. But as the kind of word that Germany is getting closer and closer, he has friends who start to say that he needs to be proud of his German blood and his German heritage, kind of distance himself from being a Czech. He gets kind of not volunteered, but kind of gets signed up to spy on Jews. His doctor's Jewish, so he talks about, he wants the doctor to find out how much of his blood's German, how much of his blood is Czech, how much of his blood's Slavic, how much of his blood's Germanic. He, through the way his wife cooks carp, his friend tells him, oh, that's the Jewish way, your wife's mother was a Jew, your children are quarter Jew. So you can kind of figure out how that goes. His son, who's not a man's man in his eyes, again he wants his son to distance himself from his Jewish friends. He kind of starts hanging out with a boxer, which the father likes the idea of because that's more manly, but then the boxer actually wants to knock German's teeth out, so obviously the father doesn't like that. There's kind of a hint of the son might be homosexual, which obviously doesn't please the father, doesn't obviously go with that idea of perfect blood in the eyes of fascists or the Nazi ideal. The word Nazi is never used, but it's about Germans during the Second World War, and this need to cleanse society, cleanse the blood. As he kind of gains power, he becomes the director of his death house, as he calls it, as his delusions and his fantasies grow and grow. He proposes that if only there was some way, instead of burning a body for 75 minutes, one at a time, if there was only some way of burning like 500 or 1,000 people at the one time, if only they could be built. So you can obviously tell where that's going. It's obviously a dark, disturbing film. It is blackly comic. There's some lovely horrible little touches. He takes the family to a kind of freak show, and then he goes to see all the aborted fetuses in jars, which uses flash photography to kind of make it even more unsettling. And again, it's just an example of the disease and not people being pure. There's a wonderful touch where he always combs the hair of the corpses before the coffins get closed and they get cremated, and then he'll comb his own hair. He does it sometimes with his children. When they're like at the dinner table or whatever, he'll just start combing their hair, then combing his. It's almost as if he doesn't really see the difference between people who are alive and people who are dead. But the thing is, the actor who plays him has this, you can see in the pictures in the background, he has this kind of round, welcoming, almost cherubic face. He's very eloquent. At times he's quite funny, but again he's completely deluded, because again he just lives in this fantasy world where he is essentially going to be the saviour. He doesn't see himself as killing all these people and helping to kill these people. He sees himself as a saviour and releasing their souls into the ether, to save them some suffering in this world. So it's that kind of mentality. The film, again, there's so much amazingly shot stuff in the film, but like I said, it's a little overlong. It could do with some trimming, but the ideas within the imagery that's used, the way they tempt him by saying, asking him to join the party and go to a club and there'll be all these blonde women that will do whatever you want, but only if you're a member of the party. So that level of seducing by using sex, not just power and authority and respect, and just the way that he looks upon his family differently as soon as these seeds are planted about their history, where they came from, where their relatives came from. This just builds and builds until the inevitable conclusion. So it's a really disorientating film, just with the camera techniques, because we are in his mind, which is obviously not a very nice or sane place to be. It was made in 1968, so 20 odd years after the Second World War, but again it's one of those films that is still relevant. We still have concerns about the right wing in certain countries. We always will have, because that's just the way people are, unfortunately. So again, this isn't just a film of a time that you can just put in a box and just say, oh yeah, it's of that time. Like a lot of the films in the 60s and 70s, they're still relevant, sadly. But it's just it's a really amazing little film. Again, not perfect, but has so many really good ideas, so many beautiful images. It is in that class of film that I kind of call beautiful horrible. Aesthetically, it's very beautiful, but obviously the subject matter is completely horrible. So that is the Cremator by Uraj Hers on second run. So I would highly recommend picking up this if you can. I believe it's either recently got a Criterion Blu-ray. Again, I don't know what the extras are like. Somebody could maybe tell me in the comments what the extras are like in the Criterion. But Cat Ellinger is always really good. I haven't actually listened to the commentary, but I will the second time I watch it. So thanks very much for watching this random review. Please, as always, let me know in the comments if you have seen the Cremator and what you thought of it. And hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying cheerio.